Hey, Peter.
Good afternoon, good evening.
I thought we would acknowledge the month of love by doing a little chat on the power of a loving mindset. What do you think?
I think it's very appropriate for Valentine's Day, and love is all around, I think, so the song said. So we need a lot more love in the world. So you're going to sort of take us through the differences between what we would consider sort of a relationship and a business relationship. So why don't we start there?
All right. Well, I think I want to start with the myth, with the love god Eros. That's the Greek name, and the Roman name is Cupid, as most people know. And once upon a time, Eros, the son of Aphrodite, was told to shoot an arrow at Psyche because everybody was in love with Psyche, and very unloving like Aphrodite was highly jealous of her. And so she told her son Eros to shoot an arrow into Psyche when she put her eyes on the ugliest man in the world. And then she would fall in love with this man. As we all know, love is blind. However, Aphrodite's plan backfired on her. And usually, when we don't come from a loving place, whether it's in business, politics, or in personal relationships, it can often backfire on us. So when Eros laid eyes on Psyche, he fell in love with her. So that is the story I thought we could weave through our dialogue about how we can have a loving mindset and the power it holds in all areas of your life. How's that sound?
It sounds good with me. I mean, you know, as we both know, but perhaps people watching may not know, I'm in the UK here and you're in the US. And we've had a little while now with a less loving tradition
Oh,
in our politics. And I do think that this isn't just a quick way of doing a video around Valentine's Day. I mean, I do think this is a serious matter for the world, in the world of politics and business. But I mean, we're going to try and stay away from sex and politics. I do know that, but you know, we have. It's not so much hate, is it? It's more fear. I think it's the sort of opposite of love going on in some parts of the world at this time.
that's what I think. I do believe that the opposite of love is fear, and hatred is a byproduct of that fear. And in these times, two continents, I'm reminded of a quote by Dalai Lama. The more you are motivated by love, the more fearless and free your actions will be. And right now, I know on both continents, people are escalating and threatening, so they are full of fear and their actions aren't free.
Yeah, and
Minimizing the freedom of both the citizens in both countries.
yeah, I mean, I mean, I can say this because I'm out of the UK, but I mean, we have our own particular versions of this around here. But Trump has just appeared on the scene, and he's spilling out a lot of fear, and we started it actually. So you know, we're not passing blame around, but you know, we started this with our Brexit and spinning fear on all sides, in fact, and this has brought us to a very difficult position where now our government seems headlong on all sides at feeling that they have to follow what they've decided to do, even though many of them know that what they're about to pursue is a path that leads nowhere, in fact, perhaps even to a darker place. And we need a massive turnaround of love to counteract that. It seems as though there is plenty of love in the world, but it seems as though we need a much bigger dose of it because the sort of machine seems to have created its own momentum. And yeah, I've just been watching our BBC Question Time while we were getting ready for this, because it's about sort of midnight here at the moment. And a question was asked about our Speaker in the House of Commons, who has actually spoke out of turn, although he was entitled to speak on this. And he said that he didn't really think it was a good thing for your Mr. Trump to come and speak in our House of Commons, because he didn't share the sort of values. And he didn't mention the word love, because that feels like a sort of, something that two people might mention. But I think he should have mentioned love there, because what he was actually saying is we want people coming in here that actually got something to bring, that help people collaborate. And after all, in the business context, one of the sort of behaviors that goes with love is participation, collaboration, and all of that stuff. I mean, it is just fresh in my mind, because there was a very funny sort of moment where a panel had to answer for this guy, saying, was he right to question this visit? And I personally believe he was quite right, but I'm doomed.
Well, love is open-minded. Love is death of the ego. Love makes life enjoyable and easy. And these are qualities of the mindset of love. Love is open-minded. Love doesn't take things personally. Love is not jealous. It's inclusive. It builds people up. So I think your speaker could have used the word, because this is being used as an action, not a noun. Love can be a verb. And I think it doesn't dwell on the self. It doesn't judge. It's open so that you can listen to different perspectives. And in business, in politics, even in a personal relationship, you have to come to the table open to the differences and be mutually respectful.
And I mean, I suspect that in this case, our man John Bercow would have been vilified by our alternative press even more had he used the word love. So he was probably well advised just to say it like it was, because he's been now considered a traitor, and there's a lot of unlove, if that's a word, going on at the moment about his strident remarks. So had he coloured it with words that are associated with Valentine's Day, I suspect that it would have given more bait to the press, really. So maybe he was right to have steered away from that word. But on a positive note about this whole aspect of, can we talk about love in business, commerce, and life? Of course we can talk about it in life. One of the things that happened last night with me, I was invited up to a private showing of the Virgin film Don't Look Down, which is a story about Richard Branson's ballooning adventures. And I could strongly advocate that. And I think there were several swear words in it when things didn't go quite right. But one of the striking things about that film was the sense of love that took place in terms of trusting people, because this balloon adventure didn't go altogether to plan. And you're up there with two people, and you could actually just drift off into oblivion, because he crossed the Atlantic first and just about made it. But the second half of the film dealt with his crossing of the Pacific with this Danish builder of the balloon, per Nordstrom, I think it was, or something like that. And they got about a third of the way across, threw some empty fuel canisters off the balloon, and for some reason they managed to throw nearly a third of the fuel away. They didn't just throw the empty canisters away. And I do remember I was sitting there on the edge of my seat with this, and Branson said, we were doomed, really, because there wasn't enough fuel to get across the Pacific. And he said something magical happened, and the other guy said, well, he's very lucky. But he said something magical happened, and we drifted up high into the jet stream and started going. They set a lot of world records. I think they went about 240 miles an hour in the stream. So we were blown across the Pacific, when on paper there was a moment where they said, there's no way we can do this. And wherever you land in the Pacific, you're 3 days away from a ship. So they would have undoubtedly perished. And his explanation was really based around love, but his colleague, being the balloon maker, he just said, well, he's a very lucky guy, and he seems to attract a lot of luck. I think since we're talking about what's essentially a spiritual intelligence rather than IQ, if we ever looked for proof about sort of emotional and spiritual intelligence, there is one example from that film, and I highly recommend people to go and see this. I'm sorry it's a bit of a ramble, but there was a lot of love built into that film last night, and that for me justifies using love in business and commerce more than fear and hate.
Well, this is a great analogy. They're in that basket together, and there's a problem. And you can either be divided or stay unified. And love and open-mindedness is a growth mindset. You know, a growth mindset creates a love of learning. And so in that basket, they had to be unified and work together.
Well, you can't exactly get out.
Right. And all the citizens on both continents, I think they could choose a powerful mindset of love to try to unify and bring about a more peaceful way that we are addressing some of these horrendous backlashes that we're receiving that can happen in the workplace as well. I mean, there's bullying in the workplace. You know, there's bullying in politics. And we have to find a way to transcend that behavior, face it, and transform it.
Well, just today on our side of the pond, one of our MPs, John Redwood, has just declared to the world that those people that had backed staying in the European Union will be punished for it. So I'm doomed. But I'm buoyed up by the thought that so is Richard Branson and most of the airlines that we have over here, because they've all, at one level, thought that this was such a crazy idea to throw away, you know, sort of all the trade that we have, and it's going to cost us 60 billion, perhaps 60 billion pounds. It's going to cost the economy. There won't be so much love going around.
Well, there's a red flag when people are being threatened.
Yeah.
When they're being threatened to be silent and not speak up, our First Amendment. I mean, we have the freedom of speech. And along with a loving mindset that can be very powerful, what goes along with it is empathy. Actually, empathy is hardwired in our brains. And you have to actively think beyond yourself and your own concerns. And so I think we have to have love plus empathy to, in any domain, business, politics, or personal, to really try to unify and bring about some peace on all fronts. And threatening people is only going to inflame people.
Yeah. I mean, on that theme, I think I'm writing a book at the moment about this sort of artificial intelligence age. And I think that what our politicians represent is a lot of people's fear about the future. And when people are fearful, they don't tend to have that empathetic, let's look at the bigger picture. They tend to close down into themselves. And I think that's both a mistake, because one never sees the opportunities that are around, and it produces this fear, which we are living through. So I do think the thing about fear and empathy are terribly connected. If we are simply living in our own selves, and we see that, you know, we have no opportunity, then there's no space for us to consider alternatives. It's one of the difficulties. And a lot of the people I talk to over here who tell me we've got to do this because, they're actually illustrating the fact they haven't they've shut down.
Right.
Well,
Fear, you're exactly right, Peter. If they instill fear, you go into the amygdala hijack, which sets off the cortisol and adrenaline in your body, and it shuts down accessing the logical reasoning thinking function part of the brain.
mm-hmm.
So if we go with our premise that the opposite of love is fear, we have to stay rooted in a loving space, in a loving mindset, so that we can constantly access rational thinking and intelligent thinking and not be reactionary from the fight flight response. And I think that's why this is such an important message we're putting out there today, is people cannot take these threats seriously to the point where they're fear-based.
Now, although I do want to take this very seriously, we can't possibly have this conversation without lightening it up a little bit.
Okay.
I do know that I won't be receiving chocolates or a card on Valentine's Day because I'm currently on a diet. So I've been working really hard on that. So I don't want any chocolates. But the other thing that I think in my world I sometimes mix up, because obviously as a man we are confused from time to time. But I wrote a book in 2006 called Sex, Leadership and Rock and Roll. So there was a comma there: sex, comma, leadership and rock and roll. And I didn't confuse these things, but it was possible for people to confuse. I mentioned that all relationships, if you drew an analogy with sex, were down to foreplay, intercourse, and afterglow. And then I was corrected by a woman who said, "You've missed out the climaxes." I said, "Okay, well, we don't really bother with that." But let us not confuse love and sex, because I think what's going on in politics is a whole lot of sex. Let's do a load of things and just get on with it. We have this phrase over here: we've got to get on with it. It's almost as
and skip the foreplay.
Yeah, well, the love might be with the beginning and the end, because the sex can be relatively short, can't it? So I'm told, anyway.
And sex can have a lot of love. The absence of love can also be in that moment.
But absolutely, they're two separate things, aren't they? And love is perhaps lasts longer, we hope, than sex. So I'm now, having introduced this lighter topic, I'm now wondering what to do with it, Melinda. So I'm going to pass it over to you to see if there are any practical things that one can do at work to spread greater levels of love around.
We have to not be reactionary.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a threat or something, is to not go to the place of fear. I do think that people need to get out of themselves, remind themselves of the beauty around them, all that we have. They've got to keep a balance. They've got to keep a balance in their minds, and move out of judgment and stay with the facts that are realistic, that are measurable, and don't get caught up in a wave of gossip. There's a lot of non-factual information going out there. And one of my fears, Peter, is this could break up personal relationships. And to not let what's going on your side of the pond or my side of the pond to disrupt the personal relationship you're in.
I can give you testament 7 months after on Brexit that undoubtedly relationships have broken down over here. You hear it all the time. Families don't go to tea anymore. Lots of horrific stories, actually, of long-term relationships breaking down. And you nailed it, I think, when you said about not being so judgmental. And coming back to a slightly naughty analogy, we watch Twitter and something appears there, Mr. Trump says something, and we suffer what I call premature evaluation, whereby we instantly judge it and then we got to do something about it. And actually, reflection. And I'm not saying we have to lie down and do deep breathing, but nonetheless, to weigh up important decisions around the world. These are not whether we're going to buy new staples from somewhere. These are big things.
Sure.
You need to think carefully about them, and that requires a bit of reflection and sometimes the addition of some animals that creep into the room, usually in these conversations. I think your dog has arrived. Is that right?
No, it's kids outside.
Oh, it's kids. Okay.
But you're right. Love is the absence of judgment. I think it's time to, when you get charged by something you hear or read, or you get charged by someone you care about that's coming from a different perspective than yours, it is just a perspective and it doesn't have to disrupt the relationship. And to not, take a self-reflection, take stock of where you are, pay attention to your own body. If you're getting tense, back yourself off. Back off from your personal relationship and remember to keep the love strong and get out of right and wrong. That dualistic mindset of right and wrong creates havoc in relationships.
Yes, of course, this is reinforced in all of our media because it's on or off. It's 1 or 0. It's digital. There's a left and a right. There's all those things. And in fact, the world is more analog than you think. There are often points between right and wrong that are actually offer spaces for better decisions than sort of the traditional sort of bipolar thing that we seem to have in the world. And we had a bipolar referendum, which was in or out, when in fact what the offer we should have been was in, out, or shake it all about, because most people actually felt. And you can ask, I can tell you this through just empiricism of asking lots of people, Brexit people, Remain people, if you said, should we reform the European Union in some ways, most people would say yes to that. But then to answer this question, this bipolar question of in or out, and then of course it's caused all this complete division, and it's tracked down to families. I don't suppose you've experienced that over there so much yet with your decision, but I can, believe me, 7 months
already.
All right, well, 7 months into this, there's a lot of division and some quite irrational behaviour going on that's not going to help us do this healing thing that we're being talked about at the moment. So it's going to be much harder than we think, because there's been so much, and everyone I talk to in Europe often thinks that the European machine, all parliament, all things need a clean-up process occasionally. Your house needs a clean-up. So people agree that perhaps some of the it's grown a little bit out of its proportions, and just needs a clean-up campaign. But we weren't offered the shake it all about option. We had to really in or out then.
So perhaps we could end on this note.
Yeah.
Instead of black or white thinking, there's a rainbow of opportunities out there to draw from, and to not lose sight of the rainbow of hope that we can get through this in a powerfully loving mindset.
And I think Dolly Parton bolted something onto that thought when she said, if you want to see the rainbow, sometimes you've got to put up with the rain.
That's right.
Not a massive Dolly Parton or country and western fan, but it sticks in my mind, and it's so true. I'm rather hoping that this time will pass, and we will therefore see the rainbow. We haven't in this dialogue mentioned what you do and your website to finish off either, Melinda. So could you do the usual?
Oh, yes, I'd be happy to. I'm an international executive coach. I do specialize in emotional intelligence, which I think we need a really big shot of. And empathy is a component of that, so it can be learned and developed. And my website is Success Starts With You.
Fantastic. I do much the same thing, but I do it as rock music at the Academy of Rock. But there we go. Anyway, much love to you when this blog comes out, hopefully around the world. And I hope that other people will be drawn towards it and magnetized towards a bit more love rather than a bit more fear.
I hope so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.